Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be I love you and imposing your will. Well, I've got two emails that I'm going to go through with you today, and they're really a couple great perspectives on the title, obviously, what the video is about. The first email is from a guy who basically used the words I love you, not as an expression of his heart, but really out of an attempt to control or possess a woman that he was starting to date. And the second guy he was in a woman he had been dating for about a year, and he in essence tried to impose his will on his girlfriend, and she broke up with him because of how he went about communicating. But before we get into either one of these emails, I got a quote on this topic that I wrote, and then we're going to jump right into the first guy's email. And the quote says, "We must always respect the free will, freedom, and boundaries of those who we are in relationship with. When someone tries to use guilt, sympathy, anger, manipulation, or force to impose their will upon another, that person will always resent it and ultimately choose their own freedom instead of staying in relationship with them. If you feel insecure, inept, or that you do not deserve to have what you want or someone to love you of their own free will, you must resist the urge to use words or tactics that do not respect the freedom, free will, and choice of those you love or want to be loved by. If you don't, eventually they will leave you because you are violating their freedom, their self, and their dignity. Loving relationships are about giving, not possessing or forcefully imposing your will upon others out of weakness or fear." Human beings do a lot of this. They use all kinds of tactics to manipulate and get the other people to do what they want, whether it's friendships or intimate relationships or obnoxious salespeople. So let's go ahead and jump right in the first guy's email. He says, "Hey Coach, I want to ask you a question on what to do after a premature I love you statement to a girl who is 30 and is 2 years older than me. I met this girl, we're both international students, in late April of this year, and I initiated our first date by asking her out for a movie. She likes movies," he puts in parentheses. Well, movies aren't a great way to go about dating somebody. Think about it. You go to a movie, and what are you doing? You're sitting there watching a screen, and you can't have a conversation. You can't really get to know somebody when you're sitting there staring at a movie. Movies are great things to do with your girlfriend or your wife when you've been in a relationship for a long period of time, but not on a first date or even the first couple dates, because what you want to do is you want to establish rapport. You want to get to know the other person. That's impossible to do if the two of you are sitting in a movie theater staring at a screen. He says, then surprisingly, she showed her interest in me by asking me out for movies almost every week since our first date. Well, that kind of tells me that it's like the same routine. Dull and boring, doing the same thing every week. After a while, that gets old. He says she invited me to go on a cruise with her family, but due to some visa issues, she couldn't actually make it. A week after the trip, she invited me to her house and personally made me my favorite meal. Well, that's cool. Hang out, have fun, and hook up. Create an opportunity for sex to happen. That's what a date is at the end of the day. Two adults who are attracted to one another. It's the whole reason that they were drawn to one another in the first place, to go on a date. I was feeling that she was signaling me her keen interest, and considering she would soon be relocating to a city 2 hours away for work, now we have the real motivation for why he said, I love you. Notice what he says. Feeling that she was signaling her keen interest, and considering she would soon relocate to a city 2 hours away for work, last Friday I asked her to be my girlfriend. This is really the problem here. It's not so much that you said I love you, it's the fact that you're going, oh my God, she's moving away. Let me possess her because there's going to be other guys in her new city throwing their dicks at her. And if I lock her down to a commitment before she leaves, then I'll feel better about myself and then I'm not going to lose her to somebody else. This is part of the problem when all you do is go to movies. You don't really get a chance to know each other. And so asking to be for her to be your girlfriend or saying I love you, it's not as a gift from your heart to say, honey, you're amazing, I love you. It's coming from a place of, I want to possess you. I'm afraid that I'm not good enough for you. I'm afraid that you're going to eventually find out that I'm really not a lot of fun and boring and you're just going to leave me for some other guy. And that's how it comes off. He says she was thrilled, but still said she would be discreet considering her age, as she hoped to love for marriage. That's her excuse, but at the end of the day, what's happening is remember, I've said this quote a number of times, you got to love in such a way that the person you love feels free. And what you're saying, what you're doing is it's not respecting her freedom and her free will. You're strictly doing it to try to possess her and control her. And the reality is, it has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with how you personally feel about yourself. And this is always going to blow up in your face, especially when it's really new in the beginning. You got to let women come to you. Remember, attraction is not a choice. She already liked you. And when guys do things like this, even when girls do the same thing, it causes the other person to feel like they're going to lose their freedom the more they stay involved, and they're going to bounce on you. And she hoped we could still hang out and see what happens in the future. Remember, that's why I tell guys, hang out, have fun, hook up. Just focus on creating an opportunity for sex to happen. Don't talk about the relationship stuff. Because when a woman is in that place, when she feels safe and comfortable enough with you, she's going to bring that up. It really makes things easy when you focus on it from that perspective. So in this particular case, I can tell you obviously haven't read my book yet. So that should be the number one priority, is so you can learn the fundamentals. And for those of you who don't have my book, on my website underneath the email sign-up box, there's an image of my book. If you click on that, it'll take you right to Amazon.com. You can either download a Kindle version to any electronic device in under 60 seconds, or you can select a paperback version and order that. But you got to learn the fundamentals. I mean, you can pick a lot up in the videos, but at the end of the day, you got to read the book. You got to learn the fundamentals. That's why I say 10 to 15 times. Because it takes you through the whole process of pickup skills, dating skills, relationship skills. And you've got to know all these. And then what's happening here is this guy's putting the cart before the horse. If he really would just chilled out and relaxed and kept hanging out, having fun and hooking up, who knows? She might not have even moved 2 hours away. Love has an amazing, powerful effect on women. They'll leave their country, they'll leave their family, they'll change their religion, they'll give up their jobs, they'll give up their possessions, they'll give up their freedom. I mean, every once in a while you hear about a woman falling in love with a prisoner who's in prison, and she ends up breaking him out. And she's a lawyer, she goes on the run. There's a lot of famous examples of that. You can Google that stuff. He says, however, this week she seems to be cold to me, not giving me texts or phone calls, and not asking me out as before. Yeah, because now she feels like dating you or being involved with you in any way is a threat to her freedom. He says, it suddenly struck me that many women would lose their interest in a man once he pops the L word, as he is no longer a challenge for her. Well, the problem is that you weren't saying I love you because you loved her. When you have a non-attached way, it's just an expression of your heart. She can be like, oh, thank you, sweetie. But you were saying it strictly to possess her. And that's going to cause, because she's not emotionally at that same place, that's why she bounced on you. He says, I'm suspecting that this is happening to me, and I do not know what to do to rekindle her interest. I'm wondering if I should pretend to walk away and leave her alone, waiting for her to come to me, or if I should just keep asking her out once a week or so. Well, don't call her, don't text her, don't do anything. And in this particular case, because you're so early in things, you're not trying to get an ex back. But under normal circumstances, you just call once a week and ask her out for a date. If you call a girl and she says, no, I'm busy, and she doesn't offer any kind of, if you say, ask her if she's free, and she says, oh, I'm just so busy, I'm so jammed up, I'm sorry, I don't have any time this week. And she does that, you hear dead silence, she's not enthused. I'd wait 2 weeks if she reacts that way, and then call her one more time and ask her out, and she gives you the same BS to say, wow, it sounds like you're pretty jammed up schedule-wise, so you know what? When things free up for you, I'd love to see you. Just give me a call, and we'll plan something in. And then you walk and you never look back. That's the proper way to handle at this point. But if you don't do anything, like I said, wait the full 7 days. If you haven't heard from her in 7 days, call her, ask her out one time, and if she won't make a date or she just responds just like I mentioned a second ago in the video, Wait 2 weeks, call her, and if she gives you the same response, don't call her after that. And if you never hear from her again, then you know that you pushed too far and you've totally caused her to make... Because you got to remember, now she's moving 2 hours away, so she might have already made up her mind that, maybe this isn't the right guy for me. The worst thing you can do is continue to pursue, because all that's going to do is reinforce, oh my God, the more I get involved with this guy, the more I'm going to potentially lose my freedom. And then it'll just be unrecoverable at that point. So let's get into the second guy's email. He says, hey coach, my girlfriend of a year asked me for a break due to an argument that we had recently. I've handled everything this far, and I have her back at least talking to me again, but I'm more concerned with the reason she got upset to begin with. See, I've gotten mad in the past, and she says I blank out. Pretty much what happens is I can't seem to relay the information I want to get to across to the person I'm talking to, so I basically force it upon them. Nobody likes that. I mean, just look at all the wars. I mean, nobody likes somebody else coming in their house or coming to their city or coming to their town and telling them how to live, what to eat, what to wear, what they can and can't do, what they can and can't say. Human beings naturally, instinctively resent the shit out of somebody else telling them what to do or imposing their will upon them. And one of the things I love about America is our founding fathers believed that freedom is a gift from the Creator. In other words, we are born with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, without interference of other people or busybodies telling us what we can and can't do, or how we should and shouldn't live, or what we should and shouldn't say. He says, shouting my sentences with authority and cutting off the other person in conversation. It's like anybody would say, you're an obnoxious jackass. I'm not going to listen to you. Talk to the hand because the face ain't listening. You just can't behave that way. He says, I only do this because I know what the other person is about to say is complete garbage, in my opinion. Well, that communicates that you don't respect or value the other person. In other words, you think they're weaker than you, so therefore you try to force yourself. And you get angry and you get pissed off. Well, what's behind anger? Obviously, fear. What are you afraid of? You're feared that the other person's not going to understand you, that you're not going to be able to get your point across, and therefore you seek to force them into submission. People do not like that. It's a bad fucking way to go. I had a business partner that was like that. He'd get pissed off, he'd get fear. He literally would threaten you with violence if you didn't go along with what he wanted or come up with a better alternative. And after many years, it's like myself and my other partner, we just got fucking tired of that immaturity. And it was just because he came from a really shitty, fucked up household, and therefore he learned this dysfunctional way of communicating. And even in his older age, in his 60s, he still hadn't grown up. I mean, he still hasn't to this day, even though he's in his 70s now. He says, and I feel that my point needs to be heard before they try to move the conversation or put another angle on it. So in other words, you're afraid that you're not going to be able to get your point across. But at the end of the day, trying to force it upon somebody else, it's just not going to work. He says, this only happens in circumstances where someone is attempting to discredit my opinion on something that I feel very strongly about. Well, you can always say, you know what, this is my opinion, this is what I feel, and we can agree to disagree, but this is what I want. He continues on, it usually has to do with someone picking on me, using profanity against me in careless, such as, he ain't gonna do nothing type of manner, and that really sets me off. And it's not to say that I'm a live wire, it usually takes a couple of repeated offenses for someone to trigger this response from me. Well, the thing with women, if they learn your weaknesses, they learn the chinks in your armor, and they can't help but want to cause you as a man to become a better version of yourself. And so that's why they're going to needle you on those weaknesses, hoping that you grow beyond it, that you become stronger and learn a better way to resolve it. Because women don't like it when a guy is constantly weak, or they constantly point out something and he doesn't do anything about it. It causes the woman to feel unsafe and uncomfortable. He says, although I can go off on a moment's notice, if I feel it's required. My dad has been this way forever, and I guess that's where I picked it up from. Exactly. The thing is, it gets results. A lot of times when some guy or guys at work want to bully or mess with me, I would use this technique to silence their bullshit and let them know that I was for real. I never got picked on again. It just wasn't worth it. Well, in some cases, that's appropriate. But obviously, with your girlfriend, who in most cases is usually going to be smaller, more petite, and just physically weaker than you, that's going to scare her. They don't like that. And men who argue with women are men who don't understand how to communicate with them in an effective manner. And I talk about this in my book. He says, I love her, and the argument was over something so small and so stupid, which led to something so big, that my actions are made that much bigger because of its insignificance. I'm not taking all the blame for the entire argument, just the part where I started shouting. And that's what you should apologize for. You should say, honey, you know what, I just want to apologize for getting angry and yelling at you and using harsh language because that was inappropriate, it was immature, and I'm sorry if that made you feel uncomfortable, and it was just totally inappropriate. And I want to talk about that conversation that we had because it was just, I fucked up. It was my bad, and I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry however, I'm sure she gave you some feedback of exactly how you made her feel and how it was inappropriate. But you need to apologize for that. He says, I really wish it didn't happen, and I feel like the world's biggest asshole. I can't blame her for questioning whether or not she's willing to put up with my episodes. So in other words, this has happened in the past. He says, I wouldn't wish it on her either. I want to fix this if it can be fixed, and I can remember being picked on pretty bad as a kid, and I used to just hope they would quit. But they didn't. Well, tell her that. Say, you know what? It's part of my own shit that I'm trying to overcome. I got picked on a lot as a kid, and this is how my dad taught me to deal with it. And obviously I can tell it really bothers you and it creates problems in our relationship, so I'm going to work on it. Maybe going to a counselor or talking to somebody about those anger issues would be helpful for you. He says, it just got worse and worse, and it bothered me more and more to the point where it really hurt. I can't remember crying myself to sleep one night, or I can remember crying myself to sleep one night, my parents coming to my bedroom door. It must have been like 6 or 8 years old. I told them how people at school kept calling me names, and they wouldn't quit. I felt like shit, and I couldn't stop crying, probably a case of heartbreak. I remember my dad telling me the next time someone did that, to tell them to shut their fucking mouth, LOL. And it made me laugh. My mom was like, no, he can't say that. And it ended up being a stupid idiot could say. Can you explain my issue to me so that I understand it better? And she's seen a few glimpses of it and is repelled by it. Yeah, dude, it's something that you definitely need to get under control, because eventually she's going to get tired of it. Because think about it from her perspective. You're scaring her. Because when guys act that way, they're losing self-control. And when a guy loses self-control like that, she's going to fear for her physical safety. Do you want your girlfriend to fear for her physical safety? Do you feel good about a woman becoming scared of you that you may potentially just totally lose it and harm her physically? All women are going to have that kind of an instinctive fear, and when you act that way, she's naturally going to be, maybe she might have had somebody in her family that she's seeing get smacked around by a lover, a husband, father, whatever. And so she may have some real fears about that. So you got to take that into consideration as well. And so next time you want to fly off the handle, you got to think, you know what, is this going to help my relationship? Is this going to make her feel safe and comfortable around me? Of course not. But what you can say is, honey, you can stop her and say, look, when you're saying that or when you're acting that way, I feel like you're shutting me out and you don't want to listen to me, and it really makes me angry. It makes me feel like you don't care about what I have to say and that you don't even want to listen to me. And maybe if you're upset, maybe I should leave and we can talk about this some other time. But the bottom line is, I got to feel like you care enough about me that I can speak to you and you'll actually listen and try to understand where I'm coming from. The thing you got to remember about women is they communicate in an emotional and a relational sense. And if you're trying to use logic and reason to communicate to her instead of speaking at her at an emotional level, just like I've talked about in the video, how to communicate with women effectively, or even the one that I did last week, which was a great example And the name of that video was called How Men and Women Communicate Differently. And I also talk about this extensively in my book. If you're trying to use logic and reason to get your point across, it's like beating your head against the wall, dude. And since you're the one that I'm talking to, you're the only one that I can actually influence to change your approach. Because the bottom line is, if you don't change the way you're communicating with her, eventually she's going to leave you and she's going to break up with you for good. And if you don't resolve this issue, you don't learn a more effective way to handle it. In other words, keeping your cool and not just flying off the handle. Because remember, behind anger is what? Fear. And so remember, when you feel like you want to fly off the handle, you're afraid. And so ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? And communicate that to her. Say, you know what, I feel like I'm never going to get my point across to you. And communicate from a more relational. Use examples from an emotional sense. Remember, anything that you're doing and saying, if you can communicate at an emotional level with her, she's going to understand. But if you're trying to use logic and reason to win an argument, it's just going to escalate and spiral out of control till it just blows up in your face. He says, I know it's not acceptable for me to lash out like this, and I want to understand it better and how to change it. Well, think of it from this perspective. People will do more to avoid pain than they'll do to gain pleasure. So obviously you know that flying off the handle and trying to, there's, like I said earlier, there's certain instances where that's appropriate. If somebody's bullying you or threatening you, you say, hey, don't fucking talk to me like that, or hey, don't treat me that way. And you can tell by raising your voice and the way you look at them that, you know what, that's being rude and inappropriate. But with your girlfriend, you take that tone, you're going to scare her. So think about it. What are the consequences of continuing to scare your girlfriend? You're going to lose her forever. How much pain is that going to cause you? Remember, you have the ability to exercise self-control and restraint in every moment. And at the end of the day, you becoming angry and coming unglued, that's your own shit. That's your own issue that you're dealing with there. And trying to get angry and pissed off at her, you're going to eventually lose her forever if you don't change the way you're going about it. Speaking to her in a way that she can actually understand. You got to be calm. Remember, James Bond. How would James Bond be? He'd be calm. He'd be relaxed. He would listen to her. Like you said so yourself, you're interrupting her in mid-sentence. When you do that to a woman, you make her feel like you don't give a shit about her feelings. She's probably trying to communicate something to you emotionally. So ask her, listen to her, and try to put yourself in her shoes. And remember, women use examples and relational examples. If she's bringing up something over and over that you've maybe potentially done in the past, what she's trying to communicate to you is that you are hurting her right now in the same way that you hurt her in the past. So think about that. Always try to empathize with the other person. When you're communicating with anybody in life, not just your girlfriend or your significant other, try to walk in their shoes. Put yourselves in their body. Try to look through their eyes. Try to listen with their ears. Try to understand where they're coming from, what they're dealing with, what they're potentially feeling inside. And if you can put yourself in their shoes and feel what they feel and try to see what they see, it'll give you a different perspective as opposed to completely focusing on yourself, and then when they don't get where you're coming from, just trying to interrupt them and force your will upon them. Again, consequences of not changing your behavior is you're going to lose her forever. And say that happens. Say you lose her and she says, that's it. I'm tired of your anger. I'm tired of the fact that you can't communicate like an adult and you start acting like a little 5-year-old. If you don't fix this, your issue with her now, you're going to have the same problem with the next person, the next girl that you get involved with. And eventually, guess what? She'll leave you too. It's like when I talk to guys and their girlfriends have dumped them, if I was to talk to those other girlfriends, they would all say the same thing. They left him for the same reasons. And this woman eventually is going to leave you because she's over it. So you have an opportunity right now to fix this once and for all and to keep your cool and try to understand where she's coming from and actually listen as opposed to trying to talk over you. Because when you talk over her and you use logic and reason, all she's going to do is shut down to you and shut you out and give you this silent treatment. It's just a bad way to go, dude. It doesn't have to be that way. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching session. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab at the top of your screen, and just follow the instructions. And I will talk to you soon.